Hello there. My name is Melina from English Comp 102303, and I would like to talk about the problem of voter suppression. When you think of the term voter suppression, do you think of things such as maybe poll taxes, like where you had to pay to vote, or even literacy tests, where you had to prove you had to read to vote? Yeah, probably. But what if I told you those weren't the only forms of voter suppression? By definition, voter suppression means strategies used to influence the outcome of an election by discouraging or preventing specific groups of people from voting. But how do we see that today? One method that I'd like to expand on specifically would be voter ID laws, where voters are required to show a form of government-issued identification in order to cast their ballot, such as a driver's license. Now, you may look at this and think, well, that seems fair. Our wonderful government does need to make sure everybody is who they say they are, and everybody has an ID anyway, so no biggie. Biggie. Let's go back to that whole we need to make sure people are who they say they are thing. Do we need ID to prove you're not an alien that's trying to take over our planet from the inside out, aka getting a seat on the Supreme Court? Probably not. You want to make sure our elections aren't swayed by fraudulent voting. And you know what? If you believe we get millions of fraudulent votes every election, I wouldn't blame you. That's what President Trump told us. But as it turns out, that's not the case. Voter fraud is not only very rare, but also that in many cases the fraudulent votes are actually just mistakes made by administrators. So voter fraud isn't really a problem in our elections, but the claim itself is. But let me get back to the point. Why are voter ID laws being in place not the best idea? Well, I'll tell you. Because not everybody has an ID. And who doesn't exactly? Minorities and the poor. So if we have a significant number of people who are totally eligible to vote, but can't afford to get a form of government-issued ID in some way or another, why do we even have these laws in place? Why would we exclude these people from voting? To sway the elections. People in these lower classes have been shown to be much more left-leaning, probably because the left-wing politicians are for the policies that would help them, of course. So, if you look at the states that have these voter ID laws in place, especially the strict ones, it probably wouldn't come as a surprise that they are mostly right-wing. Oh wait, what's that smell? Corruption. Under the guise of protecting our election from fraudulent voting, these allegations point towards a common mindset the majority of Americans might have when it comes to voter ID laws. They're just convenient. They make it easy on the government to make sure everybody is who they say they are and that everybody votes once. However, the problem with this is that we are simply prioritizing convenience over democracy and knowingly disqualifying those who are perfectly eligible to vote but can't based on their lack of paperwork. Let's say you're a middle-class American. It may be easy to say that everyone should have one anyway, but in saying that, we fail to recognize the privilege behind it. Many members of the middle or upper class have had the privilege as a teenager to enroll in driver's education, obtain a driver's license, etc., to eventually drive themselves to a polling location near them. But not everybody has that privilege, and that shouldn't strip others of the right to vote. In summary, no matter what, if you are middle, upper, or lower class, no matter what race you are, you should have the same right as anybody else to vote. So whether it's a poll tax or a state-issued ID requirement, forms of voter suppression still deny millions of Americans their constitutional right to cast their ballots. When we break down and analyze all the hurdles we have to jump to finally get to the point of voting, it's evident that those of us in the lower classes, the minorities, the colored people, they simply get left behind. It is the responsibility of the government to grant every citizen the very same opportunities, yet it is our responsibility as Americans to vote out those who will not. So something as simple as a requirement of a state-issued ID should not disqualify people from voting.